Thank you everybody for coming today. It's been a very long, hard struggle for me and my family, and for the families of all the other Canadians who are detained in northeast Syria. We are part of an international family group from 60 different countries who are all involved in trying to bring our loved ones home. We've all faced the same obstacles from our governments who have given us one excuse after another as to why there's nothing that they can do. And I thought I would start with a quote from Fabrizio Carboni from the Red Cross, who visited our whole camp last week. And he said that the conditions there are cruel, inhumane, and unsustainable. And what the international community is tolerating in this camp will haunt us. And that quote to me sums up everything about this appalling situation in northeast Syria, where the shame, where people are kept in arbitrarily detained conditions, no freedom of movement, no access to adequate food or water or medical care or contact with their families. And this has been going on for upwards of 3 years. So for most people, it has been 3 years. For my son Jack, who has been trying to escape from Syria for 7 years now, it has been 5 years incommunicado, meaning that we haven't spoken to Jack since 2017. Well, those are voice messages, so not even spoken. And the only contact that we have with him is via Red Cross letters that are heavily censored, because no mention of conditions is allowed. The only way that we know anything about Jack's conditions was from the first week when he was. Oh, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Jack had a fluke conversation with Global Affairs Canada in January 2018. I say fluke because the Canadian government didn't intend for it to happen, but a journalist managed to force this conversation between Jack and a consular official, because during this whole time the Canadian government has said there's nothing they can do because there's no consular assistance, and they closed their embassy in 2012. Jack said that he was held in a cell with 35 other people, but there were only beds for 8, and so everybody else slept on the floor. He only felt safe when one of the guards was on duty, and that he was put in solitary confinement for 35 days as punishment for when me and my husband went to the press to talk about his conditions. And so this is why family members have not spoken out, because they know that there will be repercussions on their loved ones. And the women in the camps are beaten if they're found in possession of mobile phones, and they're locked in toilets as a way of punishment. And so what we've been doing is trying to get some sort of action through Global Affairs Canada. What the government has been saying is that it's too difficult, too dangerous, or too complex a situation, even though other countries have perfectly managed to bring their people home. In fact, in a league table of repatriation, Canada is at the bottom. Even Britain, which has had the hardest line in refusing to repatriate people, has repatriated more people than Canada. Now, what is the reason for this? The international group have already started, many of them have already started their court cases against the government. We're only starting ours now. Our case is supposed to go to court, well, we thought next month. It might be delayed. And so we compare notes with these people from Sweden, from Finland, from Australia, from Morocco, Tunisia. How are they faring in their own fights against their government? They're all at various different stages. So, as Nafisa Mohammed, who wonderful former senator in the Trinidadian government and now attorney, she was in the attorney's office, Attorney General office, said that this is not rocket science. These people are suffering, they're displaced, and they need to be, they need protection. They don't need persecution or prosecution. And even the family members, it's highly ironic to me that family members themselves have been saying, if you think our relatives have done something wrong, then put them on trial. Just don't leave them in this legal black hole, this limbo with no hope, complete despair, no idea of how long they're going to be there. Is it going to be another 5 years, 10 years, 20 years? The Guantanamo men who were rounded up on the battlefield, or not in the battlefield, just in the region, just like these people who have been rounded up by the Kurdish forces, 60,000 of them have been called terrorists. 60,000 people, 40,000 of whom are children. This is the Western narrative, that these people are terrorists. And logic alone would take that this is just a nonsense. And how is it that everyone has bought into this narrative that it is part of the global, so-called global war on terror that only targets Muslim countries, as we can see from the Ukraine. So Ukraine now, where 20,000 fighters have gone over to fight against the Russians, just as many people in Syria were fighting against the Russian regime allied with the Syrian regime. They are now, the international legal community is scrambling to redefine these 20,000 fighters who have gone over, calling them volunteers or mercenaries. And they're now saying there's a distinction between foreign terrorist fighters and foreign fighters. Well, Jack was never a fighter, even though he has been placed in a prison with people who are suspected of being fighters. Also in that prison are 9-year-old boys, people who were rounded up by the SDF forces for refusing to join the draft. And this was only discovered in the House of Cade prison massacre in January of this year. But there were 700 boys in the prison. No one even knew they were there. And 100 of them are still missing because when ISIS members stormed the prison, and then there was a counterattack by the guards and also by the US military. US military bombed their own prisons in an attempt to increase security, supposedly, at the camp. And that's when I decided I had to speak publicly, because this is going to be my son that's next. This is going to be, my son is going to be the next one. Not only could he die from the conditions in the prisons, he could be shot by the guards, or he could be killed by the US-led coalition forces who are supposed to be, who are taking charge of these people that they have no idea what they are going to do with them, apart from who knows what the plan is. So now we're calling on the Canadian government to take responsibility for our relatives and to stop this atrocious abuse of human rights, and that We want our relatives back before they're brought back in body bags. And Trudeau needs to listen to us. He's refused to meet with me. His ministers, all they do is pass me on to global affairs, who give us the same paragraph of nonsense that they've been giving us for the past 7 years. Well, we've had enough, and we need our relatives to come home.